Hi, my name is Taylor Manjaruga, and in this video I'm going to talk about how I started my own business. I'm going to be going over all of the details from the start of my business all the way to where I'm at with my business today. Here's a little about myself. I'm now 25 years old and have had my business for 3 years now. I'm a senior at Stockton University majoring in hospitality tourism management. Through this video, I will be talking along with many pictures and some videos that I've captured of my business. I can't say that I master in making videos, considering as I'm talking there will be pictures that don't match with what I'm talking about right then. So pay close attention to my story so you can put the images together as you hear parts of my story of starting my business. As you all should already know, starting a business includes many obstacles to get where you want to be. In this film, I will also talk about what those obstacles were for me and how I pushed through them. It all started on a sunny afternoon in March. The spring semester was coming to an end soon, and I was feeling some pressure on what kind of job I was going to be working at in the summer. I knew I had to start searching promptly. In the past, I had different jobs such as waitressing at 2 different Italian restaurants, working at a tree farm, and helping my mom cater events that she held. I can't really say that I wasn't satisfied working at these past jobs, but I wanted something different that summer. As I sat there looking through jobs on the internet and skimming through the job section in the newspaper, I heard chiming music. It got closer and closer until eventually it was right in front of my friend's house. We all looked out the window and chuckled and reminisced about our past memories as children and looking forward to the ice cream truck on a daily basis. As we continued to share our childhood ice cream truck memories, the idea came to me. Why not start an ice cream truck business? I said it out loud to everyone and they all laughed at me. At first it was kind of a joke. I mean, how was I going to do such a thing, right? Then someone in the room challenged me. She blatantly told me, "You would never be able to start an ice cream truck business. It's probably impossible." Right after she said those words to me, I had a mission. That mission was to start an ice cream truck business. I laughed back and told her she was right and kept my mission to myself. I then started instantly researching. The first thing I researched for was what type of vehicle to start with that would be fit for an ice cream truck. I searched everywhere, and I mean everywhere. I even searched when I was on spring break vacation in Florida. I lugged my friends along with me, yes, on our spring break vacation. We had driven to 2 separate places to look at 2 different trucks that I thought could potentially be a fit. I had gotten my hopes up on one of the trucks that we viewed at the second place. Everything seemed perfect in my eyes about this truck. I test drove it, it was a great size, and I basically had my mindset that I was going to buy this thing. I was going to drive it from Florida all the way back home to New Jersey. I didn't care at all. I was determined. All we had to do now was find a mechanic to come look at it to tell me that it was 100% good to buy. I figured that there was no need for that, but thankfully I agreed to do so anyway, just in case. So, we went and found a mechanic at a local mechanical business to come look at the truck the next day. Yes, once again, I drug my friends back there on our vacation. I have some pretty good friends, right? We got there and I was waiting for the go-ahead from the mechanic so I can buy this thing and get on the road. The mechanic then took me aside and said that it was a dying money pit. That's all he had to say. We left. I was discouraged. I couldn't believe that I was so close to purchasing the truck and moving one step closer to starting my business. But nope, back to square one. My friends then told me to keep on trying and not to give up. I mean, if my friends were willing to go to these places to look for the truck with me, That says something. They believed in me. So when I got home from spring break vacation, I kept searching. About a month went by and I still hadn't stopped. Every single day I would check on many sites to look for truck sales. I looked at 6 different trucks in New Jersey. My dad and our mechanic friend would come look at it if one seemed to be fit, but we weren't having any luck. Until one day on Craigslist I stumbled upon an old-fashioned Chevrolet box truck. In the description, it was described as a water delivering truck and that it was stick shift, which at the time I had no idea how to drive stick shift. I knew nothing about this truck aside from it lugging around jugs of water and that I didn't know how to drive it, but from the looks of it I liked it, and I was also pretty desperate at this point. I also knew that I wanted that old-fashioned look which was shown in the pictures on Craigslist. So, I went ahead and called the seller. This truck was conveniently and ironically located 10 minutes from my house. So the seller and I made a time to meet up, and once again I got my dad and the mechanic to come look at yet another truck with me. This time, I didn't get my hopes up at all. But when we got there I absolutely loved the looks of it, but I was expecting the worst. My Aunt Virginia tagged along with us this time since it was right near her house. My aunt, who is also an extremely successful business owner, knows what she's talking about when it comes to money, investing, and starting businesses. When my aunt pulled up the driveway to see the truck, she burst out laughing. She then said, "Taylor, how in the world are you going to convert this thing into an ice cream truck? It's hideous." We then both laughed because she was actually right, but I was looking more deeply into the project. I knew what my vision was. Don't get me wrong, my aunt was 100% supportive of what I was doing, but by the looks of this truck, it was pretty ugly from the outside and inside. As we stood there joking around about how I would fix this huge metal box truck up, my mechanic had finished looking it all over and came up from under the hood with a big smile. He told me that this truck was a steal and that I would be crazy to pass this deal up. To top it off, the owner of the truck was only asking $900 for it. I was ecstatic. I immediately told the owner that I was buying it. I had the money on me, handed it to him, and then my dad drove us home in it, as well as attempting to try and teach me how to drive it on the way. Even my own dad was struggling to drive this thing. It wasn't easy, I'll tell you that much. For the next 2 weeks, I would get all of my paperwork, permits, and certifications I needed for the truck that I had already researched about before I bought the truck so that I would know what I was in for. The major paperwork that was needed right away was a mercantile license for each city that I would be selling products in, a business license, and a health certificate. The mercantile license is a license you obtain in each city that you want to sell whatever you would like to sell in. You can go to the municipal building of each city to obtain this, and they will provide you with the documents and information that you need to have to earn their mercantile license. Every city has different but similar rules and regulations in order to obtain one, but this license is a must-have if you are selling anything anywhere unless it's on private property. If it's on private property, it's up to the owner of the property to make his or her own guidelines for whatever is being sold or given out on their property. The business license that I got was an LLC. You can also obtain this license at most municipal buildings. If you cannot obtain it at your township's municipal building, then your township municipal building will most likely be able to provide you with the next closest township municipal building near you that you can go to obtain one. An LLC business license is for when one opens a small business in case anything goes wrong with the business. It protects the business owner's name. The third document needed was a health certificate. You can obtain a health certificate at your closest health department, which your township's municipal building could provide you with where it would be located as well. The health certificate shows that I am following the sanitary guidelines in my county in order to sell the desserts that I sell. During these next couple of weeks of preparing to launch my business, I also learned how to drive the thing, along with fixing it up majorly. One of the top things I knew I needed to fix up first and foremost was the outside of the truck. I now was on a tight budget money-wise. I knew I had to paint the entire truck, and I figured it would be a lot of money. I went around looking at price quotes for a paint job on it. The prices that were given to me were extremely out of my price range. My next resort was to do it myself. When I told my family how the pricing was way too much for me and that I had to figure out how to paint it myself, they thought I was completely crazy. But at this point, I had no choice but to either drive around this hideous, dingy-looking red truck or make an attempt at painting it and see how it turns out. I then went to Home Depot to look at paint. I really had no idea where to go, so I just walked in and asked the salesman what kind of paint I could use to paint a truck. The salesman that I talked to also laughed and asked many questions as to why I was painting a truck. After I told him the story, he was on board with me and trying his best to steer me the right direction, even though no one had ever come to him with this situation. He led me to the sanding section because he and I both knew that I had to sand the thing first, since there was lettering on the truck along with the bad prior paint job. He then led me to the primer section because he suggested that I prime the entire truck so that the paint goes on smoother and nicer. We then went and picked the color that I had in mind, which was called bubblegum pink. Lastly, he led me to the brush and roller section. I now had everything I needed to work on the exterior of the truck. I started right away at sanding the truck, which took me hours upon hours with an electric hand sander. I then went on to the priming job, which I edged with a paintbrush, then primed the entire thing with a paint roller. After that, I could finally start painting the bubblegum pink paint onto it, which I also had edged with a paintbrush, then painted the entire thing with a roller as well. I spray painted the bumpers a shiny black paint which had glitter in it to give it a little sparkle. I also purchased giant eyelashes to fit right above each headlight. After I was done as much of the exterior as I could do, I knew that I still needed to install a side sliding window so I could serve the ice cream out of it. I went back to Home Depot to purchase the exact window that I needed and hired a guy that could install it into the side of the truck for me. After the window was in, I still wanted to have some sort of logo put onto my truck. So I talked to my best friend Gina, who just so happened to graduate from Stockton with a minor in graphic design. I knew I could trust her with coming up with a killer logo for me, and that she did. Gina blew me away with the most perfect logo that fit my style just right. I then went around to places that puts logos onto business vehicles. My vision of the logo on the truck wound up not working out because of how pricey it was to put it onto my truck. It was okay though. I still was going to use this amazing logo that Gina had designed for my business cards, branding, the t-shirts that I had made, and for social media purposes as well. After I was done with everything that I could do on the exterior of the truck, I went on into the interior of the truck. Since I now knew the process of how to paint the outside of the truck, I decided to paint the inside as well. I picked an aqua blue paint for the inside walls and a silver paint for the floor of the truck. The silver paint was actually made for garage cement flooring, so I knew that it could be durable enough to be walked all over. After I was done with the inside of the walls and the floor, it turned out exactly how I pictured. At this point, I knew I had to still purchase the chest freezers along with learning exactly how to run the freezers inside of my truck and what would be needed in order to do so. So, back to Home Depot I went. I purchased 2 chest freezers there, one bigger one and one that was the next size down from the bigger one. When my mechanic had looked over the truck during the time that I purchased it, he had mentioned how he could install an inverter into the truck so that the freezers then would be able to get plugged into the inverter and run off the truck engine batteries. Mistakenly, I did not look into how much that whole process would cost. At this point, I was running out of almost all of my money I had saved. I need to figure out a plan B. I talked to my mechanic and he suggested another cheaper route. He told me that if I purchased a generator, I could place it on the back of the truck on a rack and the freezers could run off of the generator. I absolutely despised this idea because I would now have a huge, obnoxiously loud generator hanging on the back of my beautiful pink truck, but it was going to save me thousands of dollars that I did not have left, so I had no choice but to do it. So, I went back to my second home, Home Depot, and bought a generator, a rack for it to sit on, and all of the cording that I needed. After I hooked up the generator and let the freezers get to a freezing point overnight, I now was ready to stock the freezers. Another addition to keeping the freezers running was having to plug them into an outlet overnight. I was going to unplug the freezers from the truck every night and run an extension cord from my garage to the truck and plug the freezers into the extension cord so that way they could run off of our electric and not off of the running generator or inverter. When I was researching prior to purchasing the truck, I found a Jack and Jill distributor close by that sold ice cream novelties in bulk at wholesale price. Since I could now show proof of my business with my business license, I was able to purchase ice cream from the Jack and Jill distributor so I could sell it out of my truck. When I made my first purchase at Jack and Jill, they provided me with a sticker of each novelty item that I was going to sell out of my truck so I could have it pictured on the outside. I didn't like the idea of putting these stickers right onto a freshly paint job that I had just done, but I had no choice or else customers would have no idea what to choose from. I now officially was ready to hit the streets. During my first summer, which was the summer of 2014, I learned so much. I learned how to be a pro at driving a huge stick shift box truck. I learned that I can't expect a 1980 truck to not have any problems along the way, even if that meant breaking down twice in the middle of a busy intersection and getting out and physically pushing the truck off of the road until my mechanic came to the rescue to fix it. I learned the certain routes to drive in where customers are always on the lookout for me. I learned how to manage a large amount of money coming in and not being able to go spend it because of inventory costs, truck maintenance costs, etc. I learned what tune to play while driving around, and trust me, there are certain tunes that I learned never to play unless you want to get the strangest looks from people. I learned that there's some tough competition. Yes, even in the ice cream truck field we go hard. I learned that starting a business was one of the most stressful yet rewarding tasks that I had ever taken on. The list of things I learned the first summer of operating could go on and on about new details. During that summer, I also made many new friendships with so many customers. There were customers that counted on me to come by all of the time. For example, I had a parent tell me that their child would call me on their toy cell phone asking for the big pink truck to come drive to their house today. I also had a parent tell me that her daughter had woken up from a dream saying, "Big pink ice cream truck with puppy." That had absolutely made my day. There were also customers that had made me gifts, cards, made me meals, and were always offering things which made me feel like I was really making a difference in their lives in a way. It was hard to explain to some customers that I couldn't show up every single day due to how big of a route that I had adapted to. I separated areas in my township throughout the 7 days of the week. I slowly got the hang of what exact time to start driving around also. I started every day at 5 p.m. and drove my route until it got dark. The reason for starting so late in the day was because, ironically, when it's scorching hot outside, the majority of people don't come running outside for ice cream. The only times I would take the truck out before 5 p.m. was if I was swinging by a local community pool or daycare that I would get called to come to stop by at. I also started getting phone calls and emails for events. People wanted me to come to their kids' parties, social events, graduation parties, etc. I really liked the idea of this, and this was another huge stepping stone for my business when word started getting around that I could come to events. The first summer and fall of running the truck was such a learning experience and a huge stepping stone to growing more successful with my ice cream truck business. I had stopped driving the truck around October and had brainstormed many ideas during the upcoming months that led to the next spring. Spring 2015 had come along and I was bringing all of my ideas to the surface. First, I wanted to do more work on the exterior of my truck. I came up with an idea to build a chalkboard. The reason behind this was that I knew I wanted to come up with new unique items that I could write out on the chalkboard. I did some research and back to Home Depot I went. I looked around at the options of different boards that were waterproof and that I could paint with chalkboard paint. I wound up choosing a sheet of plexiglass, which I sanded down for the chalkboard paint to go on smoothly. I then found a fancy edging border for the plexiglass and asked a carpenter friend of mine to try his best on putting together the pieces exactly how I envisioned, and that he did. It came out perfectly. He bolted it onto the truck and I absolutely loved it. Next, I knew I absolutely wanted to get rid of that hideous generator on the back of my truck. I had now saved enough money up to put the inverter into the truck so that I could plug the freezers into it and it could now run off the truck engine's batteries. Another part of the truck that I wanted to change was how I had the stickers stuck right on the paint. I didn't want the stickers on the paint any longer. I originally had envisioned putting the stickers onto magnets so they wouldn't be stuck on the truck and I could remove them, but the truck is aluminum and not magnetic, so that didn't work out. So I came up with another idea, which was to find a huge sheet of metal and get it bolted onto the truck so I could then turn the stickers into magnets like I had intended on doing in the first place. This now made my display so much cleaner looking and more helpful as well. I now could add and remove the magnets which displayed each ice cream novelty on them. There was one more thing that I wanted done on the outside of the truck for the upcoming season. I wanted ice cream characters painted on. One of my good friends is amazing at painting characters onto anything, so I hired her to do it. Every character came out adorable and just how I pictured each one to be. She painted characters all along the side of the truck where there was nothing but the pink paint, so I now had some eye catchers all around the truck. But now on to my biggest vision of that upcoming season. I wanted to outbeat my competition. I had already felt somewhat like an underdog considering I didn't have soft serve ice cream, which is what my competitors had. I also knew that I still wasn't ready for a soft serve machine financially. So on to my own idea, homemade desserts. It took some brainstorming and trial and error. I finally came up with some perfect desserts to start out with. I started out with homemade chocolate chip ice cream sandwiches, homemade brownie ice cream sandwiches, and homemade glazed donut ice cream sandwiches. My debut of the sandwiches was at a graduation party that I had gotten hired for. I had contacted the customer that booked me for the graduation party a few days before the party and asked if I could add my new homemade products to the menu for their party. They were thrilled and gave me the go-ahead. Guests at the graduation party were blown away when they tried the different concoctions that I was offering. Let's just say that the Jack and Jill products were non-existent in the hands of the guests at this party. The homemade treats were the only products that the entire party was asking for. I knew that this was big for me. I saw that everyone was absolutely loving them, so I felt confident enough to start marketing the homemade products and also selling them on the streets when I drove around. Word got around about my homemade products. I was slowly not needing to buy as many Jack and Jill products to sell off of the truck anymore. Shortly after word was going around, I received a call from the local newspaper. They asked me if they could come to my house and take pictures of my truck and write an article on my story. I couldn't believe it. This was the biggest thing yet to happen to me for my business. Of course, I happily accepted. A few days later, the article appeared in 2 different summer newspaper issues. In the article, they shared my story of how I started my business along with what I offer on my truck and even mentioned my mascot Keegan. Shortly after that, so many calls were coming in from people that wanted to schedule my truck to appear at their events, weddings, and parties. By the end of that summer, I had brought my truck to school events, 2 weddings, many birthday parties, many work events, baby showers, beach parties, yard sales, and the list goes on. I also had been coming up with a few more homemade sandwiches, like a s'mores ice cream sandwich, a homemade Oreo ice cream sandwich with Oreo ice cream in the middle, and a salted caramel ice cream sandwich. Another big thing that I had been doing to make my sandwiches even more unique was customizing them. I started offering to write names and ages on sandwiches for birthday parties and events. Soon enough, I started even making fondant characters and objects to go on top of the sandwiches to match the theme of whatever event it was that I was doing. But of course, the characters and wording on top means that I have to charge extra. I now had to come up with a proper price system for both the customized and all of the other homemade ice cream sandwiches that I was offering. With the help of my aunt, who as I mentioned is good at starting businesses, I figured out a pricing system that was fair to charge customers along with making profit out of what I was selling. That summer went by and I felt even more successful than I did the previous summer. I had learned a lot in my second season of business. One more major thing I learned was that I also had to come up with some sort of contract when a customer books an event. I learned that I needed to do this when one day someone canceled on me last minute when I had made 80 specialized ice cream sandwiches for their event. This was a great lesson to be learned because if this wouldn't have happened, it most likely would have eventually happened until I realized I would have to come up with a contract for each customer that books an event with me. When my third season of business came in this past spring, summer, and fall of 2016, my business continued to thrive. At this point, I decided that driving around every day wasn't making as much profit as I wanted to be making. Driving around all the time was also putting more miles on my truck, which in return would cause more fixing up to do. I realized that now I mainly wanted to do just events with my truck, but still drive around a couple times a week so I could keep my customers that looked forward to seeing me and buying from me. I absolutely love my business and it was 100% worth all of the blood, sweat, and tears. I honestly can go on and on with so many lessons and new things that I learned through this experience and continue to learn, but I don't want to keep you listening any longer. I want you all to immediately go brainstorm and bring to reality what you are all capable of doing just like I was. I encourage anyone that wants to start a business to never give up, and if you have an idea or dream, please go with it and try your best to make that idea or dream come true, because it can happen no matter what. I hope my story inspires you to do so. Thank you so much, Dr. Quain, for allowing me to share my story, and I hope it benefits every person that you share it with.